First of all, I would like to express our condolence to those killed in the series of terrorist attacks in Paris. I have to say that we have a great respect for the French government and its people. The courage and determination with which they made decisions that COP21 will continue. This is a good opportunity to show the solidarity of the international community, not in pushing forward sustainable development climate change efforts, but also they show to the world that the leaders and the people throughout the world stand together in their fight against terrorism. I hope that the Paris conference will send a strong and clear message that the sustainable development agenda, sustainable way of developing our economy is the only way out for the world community. Now come back to the climate change. The low carbon transformation is necessary because we cannot afford to continue such a way of production, a way of consumption as usual. And the way of doing this is to have policy space and policy guidance at the national level. So all the private sectors and enterprises will be on board. They will see that the low carbon transformation is the future for their enterprises. I think that with the implementation of sustainable development goals, with the further implementation of the legally binding agreement, which will be produced at COP21, there will be a revolutionary change in the mentality and the way of doing business of all the private sectors. And they will be on board to help us. Well, I think that the member states during negotiations emphasized time and again the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. I think this is the basis on which we can build on. As far as the developing countries are concerned, because they have been for years the emitter of carbon dioxide, and they should have the responsibility for addressing the problems we have now. At the same time, they have the opportunities to demonstrate their sincerity in helping the developing countries by making available financial support for them. So I hope that the commitment for $100 billion by 2020 a year would be translated into reality. So on this note, we would encourage developed countries to do more. At the same time, I think the developing countries are doing quite a lot. For instance, China has promised to reduce the carbon dioxide emission density by 60 or 65% by the year 2030. And in respect of India, they are also promised to reduce the emission density by 30 or 35%. That's a great contributions. And also, the countries have already, 195 of them, committed themselves, if not all, but most of them, the intended nationally determined contributions that cover almost over 90% of the gas emission. So that is a very good development. Well, frankly speaking, this is challenging because we are facing a rather complex situation. In addition to financing for sustainable development, and we need to mobilize as much as possible to fulfill the commitment by 2020. That's $100 billion US. And also, many of the European countries are faced and confronted with the influx of the refugees that also need very urgent humanitarian assistance. As the Secretary General put it well, that we should take care of those in need. But it is our hope that the money earmarked for sustainable development and climate change should not be used for other purposes. The climate change arrangement is a part of sustainable development agenda. When we reach agreement on Agenda 2030 and also reach agreement in Addis Ababa for financing for development, we have laid a very good ground for the future. And secondly, as far as I know, the negotiations in Paris and the other places before that meeting would produce a legally binding agreement. By looking at the draft text now, we see there are some stipulations regarding the follow-up mechanism and also 5-year period interval review. So these are the specific, shall I say, methods put in place to review the implementation of the agreement and also trying to readjust the commitments in order to deal with the increasing emission of carbon dioxide every 5 years. And the second point I would like to say, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a part of the sustainable development agenda. So the high-level political forum would play an important role to promote the implementation not only of the Agenda 2030, but also the climate change agreement to be reached at the COP21 in Paris. Both China and the United States made great contributions and promoted the negotiations on the ground. But if you compare China with the United States, they are quite different countries. For instance, in China, although the everyday life and the quality of life have been improved dramatically, but they still have as many as 70 million people living in extreme poverty. So that is a population almost the same as the population of Germany, but much larger than that of France and the United Kingdom. So just imagine a country like that with differences in different places, with a large number of people living in extreme poverty. It is quite different from the developing countries. But even then, China is making a great contributions. And the joint communique issued by China with the United States and recently with France, and as a great encouragement to the negotiators worldwide. And also China took the lead to commit itself to reducing carbon emission. I would trust that China will continue to demonstrate the leadership and also trying to bring on board all those countries that they wish to work with China for climate change efforts. Last but not least, we need innovative financing for climate change. I think China is doing considerably in that respect. For instance, China decided to start nationwide carbon pricing and trading throughout China. And this is something never tested before, but it's an innovative way of doing the future work. Is commendable, and we're waiting for the encouraging results.